funds. They spent a lot of time, obviously, in working with the Heritage Committee and others. And if we came in with the department's program, which they may not even support as projects, that their name would be sitting here on a project that says they're the primary proponent of it. I wouldn't want my name on a project if I didn't agree with it. It happens all the time in the legislature, in which bills are withdrawn because they have been changed to do something that wasn't intended by the author at that time. Secondly, with respect to those bills that were before the legislature, at least one of them, to my knowledge, was withdrawn. It was not defeated by the legislature. It wasn't even, it was out there. I'm not even sure it ever had a hearing, but it was withdrawn irregardless by the author. There is language in here, in each one of these, that NDOW is requested to perform comprehensive pre- and post-treatment monitoring outside the scope of this project. So we did feel that it was necessary that the department have some involvement with what's done. But again, I go back to, I would hate to be the one that has my name set on forth on a project that I didn't recommend in the first place.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'd like to give you my perspective on what has happened here. And I was on the Heritage, a member of the Heritage Committee that originally passed these heritage proposals. And since that time, I believe it has opened up a huge can of worms that at the time of my participation in on that committee, I did not know that would happen. The way I see it now, I made a big mistake in the way I voted, because I voted for these projects. Since that time, when it came before the commission, we went along the lines that it was going to be turned over to NDOW and that it became their project. That triggered NDOW to come forth with their proposals, because if they, exactly like Commissioner Capurro was saying, if their name was going to be on it, then they should have input into that project. Well, then now we come back to here today, and it's a different deal, where it's a project put forth between the proponent and Wildlife Services, and NDOW is not in it. In the meantime, we had a committee meeting where the NDOW proposals were not heard or considered. I attended the teleconference meeting, and the committee chose to go forth with the original proposals that the proponent had, with some changes. One of those changes was in reference to the monitoring, and that concerns me because that stated that the monitoring had to be independent. The funding for the monitoring had to be independent from the project funding. Now that leads me to believe that if this project is between the proponent and Wildlife Services, there's no monitoring aspect allowed for in here. So I guess what I'm saying is that this thing to me is really confusing, and I'll have to take responsibility for voting for the original proposal. Now I think it was a mistake. It's not too late to correct that mistake, so I can't support these proposals, but I'm ready to iron this thing out, take a vote, and put it behind us.
Commissioner Raine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's one thing that Mr. Capurro brought up was a very good point, and I would ask, with your leeway, that we could ask the original proponents of these projects, who I believe are here today, to say whether or not to give us their summary as whether or not what we have done is acceptable to them and whether these follow guidelines that are acceptable to them, because their name is on it. And I know we had some input at our committee meeting on this. I think is why I'd skip my mind, but I'd like to hear that from the proponents.
Are the proponents here?
Yes.
And from the agency?
Are we going to be able to ask them a question? Can we ask them a question?
I heard out with these guys.
For the record, Pat Laughlin, Nevada Alliance for Wildlife. We've always said from the beginning and the start of these projects that we wanted monitoring. We wanted to work with a biologist, be assigned a biologist, the biologist that works the areas and everything. We've never once ever stated or led anybody to believe that we were just going to take this thing over and do whatever we wanted to. The monitoring thing, some of the stuff when I was corresponding back and forth with Mark Atkinson, he started penciling in things like the one copy that I read, and I brought it up at the Predator meeting. It says on the bottom of it that there would be no way to do any monitoring for this thing. Well, that was not ever said by us or written by us. That was added on, and I did stress that at that meeting.
We might have a couple of questions for you here, Mr. Raine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question came up earlier. Are you going to have any personal financial gain, or any member of your Alliance for Nevada, the Nevada Alliance for Wildlife, have any personal financial gain from this?
No, it's the money will be monitored or taken over or whatever we need to do to get the money on the ground.
Thank you.
Commissioner McBeth?
Yeah, Mr. Laughlin, does the Nevada Alliance for Wildlife have a wildlife biologist on its staff?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Commissioner Capurro?
To follow up a little bit more on that financial thing, this actually is probably going to cost you money, because the way this thing reads, all of the money has to go to Wildlife Services, which means that your time and effort is your gift to this program, I guess. Secondly, I'd like you to answer the question I brought up, is that it is incongruous that if you adopted a plan that was 180 degrees away from what you had proposed for areas 6 and 7, would you still want your name on the project?
No, and I made that I stated that very strong several times. These projects, they've been approved by the Elko County Board, the Elko County Commissioners, different wildlife groups around Elko. This money we were trying to get something done in Area 6 where basically we have about 25% of the deer herd in the state of Nevada. We have no interest in going down the Simpson Park Range and dealing with less than 1% of the deer in the state of Nevada, and we never have.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you had a question?
I have just a question in general. I don't know if Mr. Laughlin can answer it. With regards to these monitoring that's added to the bottom of these projects by Endow, who is paying for that? Is that coming out of this project money? I'm a little confused. I was not present for the wildlife damage committee meeting, and I'm just kind of confused on where this is going to come from, if it comes out of the funding that was approved, or where it comes from.
Commissioner Raine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was discussed, and we know, at the committee level, and we know that we have no direct authority to issue any instructions to Endow over this matter. However, in many of these areas, there is a rotational monitoring that goes on in many areas, and we simply would ask them, we can't tell them, but we can ask them to monitor it before and after. I don't believe, it was not perceived by the committee that we had the power to do more than request, but we did have the power to request.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I could also clarify. One of the reasons, the issues that we're having with Mr. Laughlin and why we proposed the alternative that we did, from a biological perspective, we don't know how you monitor the proposal that we have in front of us. Mainly because of the terrain, what limited habitats available. We have an ongoing project where we've been taking coyotes from the air in the remnant winter range habitat. And so when we took a look at what he's proposing, we didn't see from a biological perspective how we'd even do the monitoring and how much it would even cost. And even if we did it, would we have any power in the statistical test be able to say anything? So that's why in coming halfway that we made the proposal that we did to do it in a mountain range where we believe we could kill predators and monitor the effect on the deer population and get some measure of success. And we plugged in the cost of monitoring into that proposal. We took Mr. Freddy's $50,000 and Mr. Laughlin's money that he wanted and put it together in a program that we felt that we could take predators and monitor the response to the deer population. We're not sure how you do this, quite frankly. And I don't know, there's not money that's been allocated from the Predator Committee or projects or through the Heritage to do the monitoring.
Can I address a couple of those? In some of my correspondence with the biologists and stuff in Elko, I got the opportunity to go into the Elko office and with Ken Gray and Larry Gilbertson, and I believe Joe Duchette was there too, and they showed me the monitoring system that they have through the computer to track these does that they've got collars on. At one time, I believe they had 36 collared does, and it's down to maybe half of those working now and stuff like that. Amazing tool, if you ask me. I mean, it was really interesting to see it. I think everybody ought to get a chance to look at something like that. And in talking with Ken Gray, the biologist there, we visited back and forth about the elk and the migration and the deer and what they're doing and stuff here. And I asked him, I said, what is the percentage of deer do you think now that is going from basically, if we had a map here I could show you, but we don't, the Winners Ranch, which is about halfway through Area 6, going to the north. And he said, and because a lot of that from the winters down has been burned through the years at different times, and with the islands of habitat. Now that's where quite a bit of Wildlife Services work has already been going on and being done. I asked him straight out, what do you think is about the migration of the deer and what they're doing now? And he told me that in years past, before the big fires, 60 to 70% of the deer wintered in that country that's burnt now. He said now they've seen a big shift and they are north of the winters and that stuff. This is the area that we want to target. So we are not duplicating and doing the same thing in the same area that they are already doing in the predator money. And as far as the monitoring part goes, I've looked through all of the monitoring stuff for the last, I don't know how many years, and the Area 6 gets flown and monitored with the regular deer count twice a year anyway. We're not asking for any extra. We're just, and as far as results, I don't know what we're trying to do here. We're trying to help the deer here. And if the fawn to doe ratio increases, I think you almost have to say, like it does in all these other areas where they're doing predator work, that it is a tool that can be used. It's the only thing that we can control. We can't make it rain. We can't make the winters easier. We can do something about the predators in places. That's all we're asking. We're just trying to help. We're not trying to steal anybody's Christmas or anything. We're trying to do something for mule deer. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Freddy, did you have, and do you approve of what we came up with at the committee level?
Absolutely. Cecil Freddy for the record, representing Hunters Alert. My original proposal was a project that was to be designed by the Predator Management Committee. I felt as if they certainly have more expertise than me, particularly with Mike Laughlin on the committee with 30 years of experience. I felt as if the only criteria I had was I wanted them to design a project that would not be geared for failure. My purpose was to have a project that worked, to say, look, folks, predator control does work. Now, someone brought up recently here that about the area. What do we know about the area? And I'd like Mr. Raines, I believe, has just flown this area 2 weeks ago. Is that correct?
In the Cortez Range, yes, and in the Diamond Mountain Range, yes.
Perhaps you could give these people a little overview of what you've seen.
I did see,
Those are different areas of the project.
well, some of his is 141.
Yeah, some of them are.
In one area, there were 2 mountain lions and numerous coyotes. In the other area, there were numerous coyotes.
How about the deer?
215 deer in the one area, and I don't remember the count in the other.
Maybe you'd like to add how many horses was there? Just,
One area, 215 deer, 350, I believe.
in other words, we had more horses than deer.
Yes.
Okay.
Significantly more. Almost double, but not quite.
Okay. Any other questions?
Commissioner McBeth?
Just the same question I asked Mr. Laughlin. Any wildlife biologists on your staff?
No wildlife biologists, no attorneys. Thank you.
I got it.
No wildlife biologists and no attorneys.
There was a shot. I didn't hear that.
Sorry, Brian.
Okay, where are we now?
Commission.
We're
At the commission.
at the commission. No one's made a motion, right?
I'm ready.
Commissioner Cabot, we're still discussing it then.
It sounded initially like there was no interchange between the proponents of the projects and NDOW. And I think there is, and I think, Ken, you're still giving oversight to these projects. Is that correct?
Excuse me?
Are you giving some
No.
oversight to these projects?
No, I think that we, and I think we've done about as good as we can do. We tried to come up with an alternative we felt that was biologically justified. We'd hoped that we'd come together between the proponents and what we thought we could do. I've offered to provide, some guidance on contracting, whatnot, but these are the proponents' projects, not the department's projects. And I think, given what I hear from my counsel, that we need to be very clear about that and pay attention to what NRS and NAC tells us we can and can't do.
Well, I'm not talking about the contracts. I'm talking about the work that may or may not take place on the ground.
The way I see this is
They're working with the biologists.
We're certainly there to work with anybody, but we're not going to provide oversight to these projects. These projects would be Mr. Freddy's and Mr. Laughlin's, and that they can write the scope of work with Wildlife Services, and then work with Wildlife Services to accomplish what their proposal is. And at the end of the year, at the end of the project, they have to do a project completion report that talks about what they've accomplished. No different than everybody else that's participated in the Heritage program.
But you'd benefit from the results of it.
Excuse me?
You would benefit from the results of these projects.
We're not against predator control. We want to make sure that if we're going to put our stamp of approval on it, we want to be able to stand behind it from a scientific and a biological perspective. And we have some concerns about where this is applied. The Raven project is a great example. We would have given that money to the University of Nevada, Reno, to expand an ongoing Raven control project that would have then monitored the effects on both sage grouse and ravens to be professionally competent in that, instead of just putting eggs out, killing ravens, and hope that we got a positive effect. We'd also want to do it in places where when you have sage grouse populations are very abundant, that's not where you target your predator work. You target it in areas where the birds are just hanging on, and that's where we need to maintain those populations. So that's why we propose a different location. So that's the difference between what we do as a profession.
Commissioner Raine?
I'd like to make a motion on this subject, Mr. Chairman. As the committee chairman for this, I'd like to move to approve Heritage Project 1023, 1026, and 1027 as approved at the committee meeting. It was just held in Las Vegas.
Who's that?
Second.
We have a motion to approve Heritage Program Predator Project 1023, 1026, 1027, as proposed by the committee and seconded by Commissioner Howell. Do we have questions on it? Commissioner Raine?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just would like to, at this point, I would like to put in a provisor of a disclosure, one thing that has come up repeatedly, and that has been repeated at committee levels. Slanderous lies have been made at prior committee meeting, and similar slander was repeated at the Clark County meeting by a law enforcement officer. And so I would like to make it, once again, clear and a disclosure, simply for those reasons, that I have no relationship with any of the proponents of any project that would in any way affect the vote that I would make here today. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. And, Commissioner Wallace?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a comment on this before we vote.
Sure.
You know, I've been messing with this. I've been on the Wildlife Damage Committee when it very first came to us, and we've been going back and forth, and it's just, to use the term I heard earlier, it's turned into a can of worms. And quite frankly, when it was brought before the commission, I don't remember which meeting it was, but I voted to support it on the fact that the Department of Wildlife was going to help design these projects, and now we are completely, whatever they put in, we haven't even discussed. We're right back to where we started, and for that reason, right now, I have a hard time supporting it, and especially with the monitoring stuff. And I really don't feel like I've still got a straight answer of where the monitoring is going to come from, and that's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Commissioner McFadden?
I won't go over what everybody else has said. I'm in agreement with all that. And I just have serious concerns that I think we're setting a terrible precedent. I think that you can pretty much bet that we're going to get some press on, some negative press on this if I believe how this vote's going to go. I have some very, very serious concerns that the department is not involved in this project, and I have some equally serious concerns that Wildlife Services has the authority to do it. I would rather see this matter tabled at least for the Wildlife Services issue, but should you decide to go forward with approving these projects, I think that'll all just happen in due course. And I've already addressed all the other issues in previous meetings with regard to the tangential issues, and so I don't need to go into those. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Kevin?
Yeah, I find myself in a pretty difficult spot here. I was the chairman of the Heritage Committee when we brought these projects forward. I thought they were reasonably well conceived, and we wanted to fill in some details. And the details don't seem like they've changed since the beginning. We've kind of went around in a big circle, and so as much as I'd like to see these projects go forward I can't really support them in the current form. The department needs to have some oversight or involvement in planning the project, or I can't see giving complete authority to a group that has no professional background, and don't take exception to that. But I think we're giving authority to someone that we really can't when the department isn't involved in this project.
I just make a couple comments on that since I'm going to be voting. I have stressed to the department for years, every time these come up, and the law says you can use it for predator. The commission has never, ever done it, and I don't really see right now, but I'd like to see the department come up with their own heritage predator projects, and you developed your own proposals already. I think you've had a deadline last week, and I'd like to see some of the department proposals come forth that we can use heritage money for predator projects, because I think it's a lawful use of the money. And if we had some projects from the department for predators, then you'd be in charge of them, and then we could get together and get them, because I would like to see the department, in charge of them, because you're really the right agency to do it, and I really would like to do it. But lacking the department's lack of participation in them with heritage money, then somebody has stepped up and suggested some projects, and hopefully the department will take note of how these go, if we vote them in or vote them out, but if they're voted in, how they go. And then we can work projects similar to that through the department. And I think that'd be a nice symbiotic relationship to be able to do that. And I have no idea what you're going to propose this year for the heritage, but I'd like to see some projects like we're hearing into your proposals. And that's all I would have to say. We have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. Does everyone understand the motion? I've repeated it. All for the motion say aye. Aye. Let's see a raise of hands. 5. All opposed to the motion say aye. Nay.
Nay.
Show of hands. 4. Motion passes. Thank you.